Welcome out here to the Trinity Cemetery Walk. It's observance of our 175th anniversary of Trinity this year. So we're going to talk a little bit about the cemetery. Before I do that, I'm going to ask Pastor Italiano to open up our ceremony here with a word or two.
Sure. I don't need that.
You don't need that? Oh, let's see. I may not need it either. I don't know.
Just want to start with a thought, and actually, if you're in social media over the last few years, I've done some invites to our Holy Week services, and I've filmed them actually here in this cemetery. And what's always struck me is, well, for me, sections back there, I personally know a lot of the people and conducted the funerals. And what's going to be amazing about a place like this is, although Trinity's been in operation for 175 years, and we have 3 cemeteries, not just this one, 2 others, at some point, this is going to be obsolete. Because when Christ comes, He'll raise the dead. This right here will be no longer needed. And that's because Christ said, I am the resurrection and the life. He who believes in me will live. And that is why Trinity has 3 cemeteries, has a cemetery, is a testament to what Christ has done, and even more so, what He will do. Want me to begin with a quick prayer? And
Go ahead.
We'll go for it. Dear Father in heaven, thank you that you sent your Son Jesus to make this place only temporary. Your Son will come and raise the dead and take His own to be at your side in heaven. Lord, bless our time here today as we learn a lot about history and a lot about people we may have never met, but one day we will, with you in heaven. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Thank you, Pastor. I don't know if I need this, but I'll use it for a little bit here. I usually talk off the top of my head, but I got a couple notes here. I want to make sure I cover everything that I wanted to say here. So this is just a historic overview of the cemetery. Our 175th anniversary booklet, I've got a copy on the table there that's going to be handed out here in the next several weeks, or at our anniversary dinner maybe.
They're going to be available as far as how they're getting out. That should be coming out in the newsletters here shortly. But we'll have both an electronic version, a PDF if you'd rather, and we'll also have the hard copy comb-bound versions. So there'll be some in the office shortly, but again, we'll probably announce how we're going to distribute them.
Okay. That's Steve Johns over there, by the way. He had a large part in putting that program together. And where's Pete at? He's over there. Who else worked with you on that? Pastor Italiano and Pastor Cook, maybe? Or the office staff?
Pete had some people working with him. I basically took one of the 100-year and made sure that information was in there. But then there's been a lot of different people, including Pastor, that's helped us edit and fix some of the typos and some of the corrections. So it's been a very large group effort.
Okay, well, you and Pastor stole most of my thunder here, so I'm gonna tell you about it anyhow. This is just an overview of history here of the cemetery. The booklet is a tremendous piece of work, and so I'm giving credit to the committee that did that, but also the people that wrote the previous history books. You know, we've had 100th anniversary, 125th, 150th, now 75th. I think there's a 75th anniversary book as well, but it was in German, so I don't know if you guys were able to use much on that. But you'll see a lot of the gravestones around here are in German writing and that Frankfurt script, which is, you may not understand the German, but you probably can't read the writing either. It's very difficult to read that. So, we won't do much walking around here today because it's kind of wet out here. We will, just go as you please here after a while. So watch your step, because there's a lot of, it's not a putting green, so it's turbulent maybe on the ground. We all take the cemetery for granted. It's been here as long as any of us here know why is this cemetery here? The church, Trinity, was across the street. A white frame building. I've got, I'm going to hand out the program thing. Yeah, I've got a couple of things here that we're going to hand out. It's one is a picture of this cemetery and the church when it was across the street. I'm going to give credit to Carol Treebolt. She came up with the picture of the cemetery. A nice clear version, and it's not real clear in how it copied over, but that's the cemetery. Back, I'm going to say it's right around 1900, maybe a little bit before, because the front gravestones are not in that picture, and some of those people died in 1900. So, I don't know how long it took to get a headstone made. So somewhere right around that time frame, it's before those headstones were made. So that's how I can estimate the date. On the opposite side of that is a picture of the church that was standing across the street. A white frame building. It's very faint, kind of hard to see. But then in about, I'm going to say around 1908, 1910, the church was physically picked up and moved over to where Trinity is sitting right now, except the front door faced to the north. Now our building faces, the front door is to the west. So it was sitting right there until 1949, when that building was demolished. Church services were held in the gymnasium at Trinity School, and then they built the current church there, the masonry building that's there. So that kind of gives you a little bit of a history on it. But imagine this. This is Route 1 here. Let's do it with my paper. This is Route 1 right here. So from the, I don't think they were worried too much about marketing in those days. From the strategic standpoint of being out there where people could see, it was right on the main road. But the main road, that church that was across the street was built in 1860. So the main road was a trail, a path. It was Hubbard's Trail, or the Vincennes Wagon Road, coming right through here. So they were right on the main artery, which is now Route 1. It was the first paved road in the state of Illinois, but that was paved in 1920 or something like that. The church had already been moved into town, 1910-ish. So anyhow, they had a good traffic going through here. As you see on that picture, the church, the cemetery had a fence around it and an iron archway that said German Evangelical Lutheran Cemetery. I think it's Evangelical Lutheran Cemetery. That was on the arch over there. I don't know how long that arch was up, and when it got taken down, there was a fence along the front, a wrought iron fence, and that was probably to keep cattle and stuff from wandering in here, because people would herd their cattle through town, take them to market in Chicago Heights, Chicago, who knows. And you can about imagine what it'd be like to have a herd of cattle in here. It'd be knocking all the stones over. That wouldn't sit too well. So that's kind of probably the reason for having the fence out there. Anyhow, so actually we have two cemeteries here. From the trees over there to these line of trees is Trinity Cemetery. On the other side of the trees is Zion Cemetery. We've got a cemetery marker that says Trinity Lutheran Cemetery, and Zion has one over there. The reason for that is in 1908, there was a discussion at the church that they wanted to have the church in town. Some people didn't want to have it in town. So, to make a long story short, some of the people took the church building and all the furnishings and moved it to where it's at right now on Castle Elizabeth. The other people that didn't want to move, they built Zion Church. So that's why there's two cemeteries. So, they probably had vested interest in either cemetery before they separated, and that's why there's two cemeteries here right next to each other. So that was kind of a big deal. It was a bigger deal than I'm going to tell you about. It's a long story, so we won't even go there. Everybody is happy right now today, so that's good.
Yay!
Yeah. This cemetery here could go back to 1860. That's when that church was built. But Trinity is a combination of two congregations that were in the Crete area. One was out on Burville Road. If you know where State Street is, there's a J&M forklift there. A little bit farther past there, Well Built is on that same road. Just a little past State Street, probably 300 yards, there's a house on the north side, and people that live there are doing a lot of gardening and flowers and growing vegetables and stuff there. And so at that location is where Trinity Church was before they built this one. And even before that, on the Rennie farm, which was, I believe, on the corner of Exchange and 394, which most lives there right now, that was the Rennie farm. And the people that wanted to start the church built a 12 by 12 building right there that served as the church and parsonage. 12 by 12. I'm betting it was probably a log cabin. But then after a few years, I think 2 years, they moved over to where I was telling you on Burville Road by the people that have the gardening stuff out right by the street. So, as a result of that cemetery, that's the one that started in 1849, hence our 175th anniversary. Just right if you take State Street and continue north, there's a big grass field there, and if you look way back north off of Burville Road, that's where their cemetery was. So that's one congregation that was in town. Another congregation is out on Nocky Road and Fremont Road. It's a brown house right now, and it's on the southeast corner of that intersection. That was the church there, and just a short distance further east, right up near the highway, is a cemetery there also. That was the Black Walnut Church. It was called Emmanuel Lutheran Church. I forgot to mention the one out here on Burville Road was called Zion Lutheran Church. Now they had a lot longer name than what I'm saying. It was the German Evangelical Lutheran Church of the Unaltered Augsburg Confession. Probably a few more words too. When they merged, that's what that became. Okay. So anyhow, that was Zion congregation out on Burville, and Emmanuel spelled with an E, Emmanuel, at Black Walnut. So they combined together, and in 1860, maybe a little bit before that, they combined, and then they built this church here. And those guys were craftsmen. They had come here from who knows where by themselves. Maybe knew a few people that came from the same area in Germany over here, so they had some acquaintance. They could speak the same language. They helped each other out building homes and farm buildings maybe, and I'm sure that they all helped with the church, because when you come over to a new land by yourself, you put your trust in God. No question about it. That was a big thing for them, and so they were really interested in having a church so they could worship God, and that was what kept them through. The man that helped organize the congregation, his name was Pastor Selly or Sell. He was out of Chicago, and he was with the Lutheran Church. He probably had his training in Germany, and he was an elder statesman in the synodical things, if they even had synods back then. I'm not sure how they had it. Pastor says they didn't, so I'm agreeing with you. So he was here for a short time, and I'm not sure. I believe the two outlying congregations before they merged together were served by a pastor from Cooper's Grove. Does anybody know where Cooper's Grove is? Country Club Hills. St. John and Country Club Hills. It's a big stone Lutheran church and school that they've got there. He was from that church. I don't think it was a stone church at the time, but this is you're talking 1849. So he came over here kind of as a circuit rider to periodically preach and give the sacraments to all the people here in Crete. Eventually, they called him to come and be the pastor here, so he did. So that he knew the people and came over here. I was going to say something else that slipped my mind here. Oh, 1849. It was a kind of an interesting year here, because it's the same year that Crete was laid out and submitted the groundwork plans, the plat, to Joliet. So So Crete's also celebrating its 175th year of establishment, not incorporation or anything, but that's when Willard Wood took his plans to Joliet for the housing developments that he had in mind. So that's the center core blocks right around Main and Exchange. So that was also 1849. Let's see what else we got here. You know, I was saying the gravestones here, I looked through to see if I could find some of the founding members' graves here, and I found there's 12 names that were the original voting members, and I've got them written down, and I found 2 along the front row. One was can't think of the name here. I want to say John Rennie, but that's not right. And then John O. Piepenbrink on the other side there. They were 2 of the founding members. If there's any other people that were founding members, the stones are so washed away, it's hard to read the names on them. Plus, they're in German fracture writing, so I'm sunk with that. But you know, that's how the whole layout is. I would bet that some of the founding members were either buried out in Faithorn, that's the Faithorn Beebe Grove area, or out by the Emmanuel Cemetery. I think the oldest Lutheran burial is in Emmanuel. There's a lady named Schweer or Scheibe. I'm not sure which way it is pronounced. You know, the spellings and the pronunciations are a little bit different now than what we had. Just as a side note, we had a group of people come here from Germany probably 12, 15 years ago, and they walked through the cemetery here and they recognized all the names. It was unbelievable. They knew exactly how the names, who the families were over in Germany, because they came here from the region where most of our settlers came to Crete here. So it was interesting to hear them comment on the different names, how they are pronounced. So we would say Rinnie, they would say Rinna. Tachi, we say. They say Takta. A very different way they pronounced them, but it was just kind of interesting to hear how they said that. As a matter of fact, they have a memorial stone in one of the churchyards over there that has a lot of the names of our family people on that stone because they were Auswanderers. That means in German that they were people who left to go somewhere else. So it was interesting to have those folks here. And another side note to the side note, we were talking to them about, you know, it must have been difficult to see your family and friends leave. I mean, that's a big deal. You know, they'd hop on the boat and go as far as Liverpool, and then they'd cross the ocean. It would be, you know, a weeks-long journey. So the guy that was kind of leading up their group, the German people, he said, well, to the contrary, it might not have been as bad as you might think, because we were glad to see him go. The reason is because, you know, all the farms over there are like built in a cluster. The homes are in a cluster, and then all the properties are like in pie-shaped wedges, and the eldest son would inherit the farm, and the rest of them, you're on your own. So and after a while, and this was ruled in a kingdom. These were not states or anything. There was a kingdom that they had to pay taxes and give a certain amount of their stuff to whoever the prince was or the ruling person. So you know, they were, he said they were glad to see him going away. Although there was many trips back and forth with people that, oh, yes, sir.
My wife's family is in Wisconsin because one ancestor, second wife wanted land for their children.
In
So
Germany.
he gave the three sons a bunch of money to go to the United States.
So that was one solution, but I think it was the people that lived there was bare subsistence. By the way, this is Pastor Caliano's father-in-law. And your name?
Ralph Eberhard.
Ralph Eberhard. So that's Gretchen's dad. So glad to have you here today. So his comment was that, let me make sure I get this right, that family had people come over, and then the people here thought their kids should get some of the land
In Germany.
in Germany. That's
the
when
one
they did it.
ancestor either had some kind of high land in his part. Guy gave him a bunch of land.
halfway between the two stories that we've got here. You know, if people are sad to see their family go, or they're glad to see them go, that's kind of in the middle. They're giving them some seed money to come over here and get a good start.
And my thought was, when you mentioned that the cemetery we have a stone with the names of the people, that was, my thought was that's the way they can remember them people and bring flowers or something.
Right, right. And they've got a lot of different
They
traditions.
didn't have to, won't have to travel.
Right, right. Well, I'm sure that there's many cities or small little towns and burgs in Germany that have memorial stones up like that, because they're, you know, they had a lot of people from all over Europe coming over here. You know, the Italians and Polish and everybody sent people over here. I'm going to tell a joke here. It may not be very funny, but you know, a lot of these Italian guys are named Tony. So on their, some of the guys would bring a traveling case, or the poor man's guy, maybe a single guy, would put it over his back on his shoulder in a big bag, and it said 2NY. So I thought his name was Tony. No offense, Pastor. Anyway, that wasn't on my plan here, but it just happened to come up. As long as we're having a little fun, you know, there's a story that there's some young guy courting his girl and drove by the cemetery here, and as they're going by, he says to his date, you know, we got the front row in the cemetery over here. She rolled her eyes, and I recognized that right away, and I said, don't worry, I'll be buried in the back. It's all Piepenbrinks up in the front here. So. Remember that?
I was going to say, I think I know this couple.
It wasn't that long ago, but so courting wasn't the word at the time, it was dating, I guess. Anywho, let me see what else we got here on page 1. So the church has already had their own cemeteries. The founding members are likely buried here or in the other two cemeteries. I'm going to read what I wrote here. Those folks came from long ago with nothing but their self-determination themselves and a very strong faith in God, and they relied on Him. We talked about the difficulty of reading the monuments here. The church does have a map, and our cemetery sexton, our new cemetery sexton, is Craig Peacock over here. The guy with the beard. He's been on the job, what, 2 months? Okay, so he's just kind of learning the ropes here, so I'm glad to see he's here today, because I can say anything I want, he's going to believe it. And after a while, he's going to straighten me out.
Until he finds out the truth.
That's right. So, anyhow, glad to have you on board, Craig, and you got your prod? Oh, right over leaning against this one gravestone here. When they come out here and there's a burial to be made, he's got to go and stick that rod down in the ground to find where the casket or vault, or the ones up in front here, they may not have wooden caskets like they used to, or like we do now, the cement vault. It's a whole different type of a thing. So, any comments on that, Craig?
What's that?
You got any comments on how that thing works?
Well, basically, I come to the grave. I go to the church and find out where their grave site is put. I come out here and I find it, and I have to mark it so that we can dig it in the proper spot. And by that, I take the probe, go down, find the grave. It's kind of morbid. I have to go down and hit the wall of going next to it. So I find both sides, both ends, take orange flags, and I mark it for the grave digger that we use. So that's basically it.
Okay. We got another graveyard expert over here. It's Jim DeMuth over there. He's on the Historical Society. He's involved with the Priest Cemetery at Vincennes and Exchange right next to our museum. And if you drive by there in late afternoon, you'll see Jim out there, and his car's over by the museum, and you go back out there, go by there again at 8 o'clock and 9 o'clock, his car's still sitting right out there, picking up sticks, maintaining that cemetery. So he's a good steward of that cemetery over there. Thank you, Jim. Anybody else we need to introduce here? Over here is Barb Innes. She's with the Lions Club.
And
we
Women's
all
Club
from
and-
the Historical Society. We sat across from each other. So I told her that we were doing this, and she's got she's Muirhead relation.
Well, and yeah, a whole bunch. And I've lived
Also
here 80
Wilkening.
years, so. Pardon?
Is it Wilkening also that's in your family? A few Wilkenings buried out here.
No,
where
You
the
and-
Muirheads were.
Okay. Yeah, you guys are Methodists, so I'm surprised Ed Gensler's not here so I can give him some chastising about that. He's a good guy. My sister Fran, Jo Hansen is on the video here. She's on the Historical Society. Deb Whitty, Dan Whitty, Mr. Everhart, Margaret. One of the 3Ms, or four, how many M's you got over here? Two of them. Two of the 3Ms were here. Margaret and Peter Dale John, Piepenbrink over there, Colleen Webb, Ryan Seahausen. You know Craig. Did I miss anybody? Oh, Bonnie Speldy, yes. Okay. So, all right, let's continue on here. I'm going to beat the rain, but I'm not sure. All right, let's flip to page 2. I got the map from church last week and counted up as best I could, and there's about 1,150 burials here in the Trinity Cemetery. I'm not sure how many are at Zion's, but that's quite a few people there. And boy, I timed that just right. I had you as the next thing on the top page, Craig. That was good. Most of the burials on the east half of the cemetery are more recent, but there are a few newer ones that still happen along the front area here, because there's I didn't count how many lots there are. A grave lot has 12 burial sites on it, and of 1,150, I'll bet you half of the ground is not used. So we might have another 1,150. Plus, there's plenty of room back going farther east there. So the more recent burials are the back half there. You know, a lot of us might know the people or the families or whatever, but it's kind of interesting to walk through the cemetery and see the different names that you'll recognize from days gone by, or grandparents, or great aunts and uncles, or personal family friends. So, let's see here. Talking about burials, we do have a couple veterans. I shouldn't say veterans. We have several people here that have died in the service. I know there's 3 at least. Not too far over here, probably about the 3rd row, is Martin Biesterfeld. He died in World War I. And then if you look over by that last tree over there, right on the fence line, the very farthest grave to the left of it, it's a small little stone. That is John Pepsi. He died in the Spanish-American War in 1898. There's another guy from the Spanish-American War buried over here. His name is John Brackman. That war only lasted like 8 months, and 80% of our casualties were from tropical diseases. So that was a tough place to go. And so those 2 people that are buried here. There's probably others that are buried here that died in the service, but I don't have their names. But there's also a lot of military veterans buried here. And when we get farther back down the driveway here, you can look to the west and you'll see a number of gravestones that have a bronze plaque on them that's put there by the government, stating their military service and a little bit about who they are or what they were involved in. So that's more of a recent thing, probably in the last 40 or 50 years. There are gravestones here that have little white stars affixed to them, and that's so they can put flags by each of those graves on Memorial Day. I don't know how many there are here that fall in that category. Now, you might see it. Yeah, there's one right here. This is, Matt Crucina. He died in 2014, so he's a veteran. So anyhow, you know, people try to take care of people they remember. Memorial Day is one crucial day in our time of year that we recognize those people. We've also got, kind of went out of order, we've got 4 of our pastors buried here. There's Pastor Brower. I think he's got that brown stone with the cross on top, right behind that big spear, or whatever you call those obelisks, whatever they're called. That's Pastor Brower. And then right near where the pump is, Pastor Alfred P. Kretzman is buried there. And then the guy that was Yes, that's right. Brower and his son, actually two of his sons were pastors here after he retired and got out of the pastor work. So anyhow, there's four that I know of here. Also, school teachers. I don't have a complete list of school teachers here, but going back prior to 1960, we had teacher Albert E. Meyer. He's buried up like in the second row here. And Theodore J. Wickman. I don't know if any of those names, Brian, you know that. He's buried right near on the other side of the pump there. Marilyn Schultz, that's my mother. She's over there at round discus sticking up there. My daughter put that artwork out there, so that's where my mom is buried. So, you know, there's three teachers. I'm sure there's more. I just don't have their names, so I apologize for not reading those. You know, the people that are buried here were steadfast Christians. We've got a lot of people here that were elders and trustees in the church, ladies' aid members, room mothers, Sunday school teachers, school board members, choirs, personal member ministries, church secretaries, kitchen staff, and many others that have served our various ministries. I'm sure there's a good scattering of those people in here. They've done their work and participated in church activities. So, you know, I can't acknowledge them all by name or what they did, because some of these people, they got one job and then jumped over to some other job and some other job. That's just kind of the way those church things work. A few of the people do all the work sometimes. I'll look at my notes here. Oh, another interesting one that's buried here. He's third or fourth row here. Major League Baseball player, Rube Earhart. He played in the 20s against Babe Ruth. He was a pitcher. Colleen, you got your husband's family is related to him somehow. Yeah, he died in 1980. I happened to run across his stone the other day when I was out here, and he used to come and have coffee up at the newsstand that used to be on the corner of Cass and Main Street, and he was a big guy and just big hands, but he was a pitcher. So we, you know, as just a kid, I didn't know what kind of questions or ask him for an autograph or anything like that, but I knew he was a big league ball player, so that's kind of interesting that he was there. You know, we talked about teachers that have died here and are buried here. They're here supporting our Christian education that we've had since 1849 as well. They saw the importance of training their kids as they went through life and instilled the same values and religious convictions that they had. So they started the school way back in those days. Those children became the embodiment of our church and sustained all of those initial efforts throughout these 175 years with the help and guidance from God our Father. We already talked about the military people that served and how they're recognized with flags on Memorial Day and everything. We also have some public servants to the community that are buried here. Officers of the town and township, police and fire and paramedics, doctors and nurses, or medical, I don't know if there's any doctors buried here, but medical caregivers of some sort, all serving their fellow man, leaving this place better for all. I know Gail, your dad and mom, right over here somewhere. Was your grandfather a mayor also? Town clerk, I know.
My grandfather was trustee of village clerk. He was in pre-politics for 52 years. My great-grandfather, he was one of the trustees in the 1899 picture that and then my two times great-grandfather, William Rudy, was mayor for 2 terms, late 1800s and early 1900s. And they're all Lukey was he was chairman of the window committee for our new church, and he helped pick out the stained glass for the present church windows. He was very proud of that.
Very good to know. So you can see, and that's just one person or one family. How many other families have been involved with the ongoing operations of our church. So it's amazing. Okay, I already gave some credits out to Carol Treebold and previous booklets that have come out that have helped us put this program together that we've got. I just want to also mention that, back in, I think it was 1855, can you hear me okay? Do I need to use this, or it's too late now?
Yes,
Okay. In 1855, I believe it was, we had Zion Church over here and Emmanuel over there, and there was so many people that were going to those churches, and they didn't have fast ways to go back and forth to church. So several groups changed and wanted to go and start a congregation at Eagle Lake, and there's several of them out in Beecher that are daughter congregations of Trinity. I think even one split off from Eagle Lake and became, what is the church over? United Church of Christ or something over across the state line, called Hanover, I think is where it's at. That was kind of, they're kind of offshoots from Trinity. More recent ones is St. Mark and Sauk Village. That was 1950s, late 1950s, I would say. Do we have anything to do with the other church in Grant Park? What is that?
What I got from that newsletter.
Okay.
Yeah, Grant Park.
Grant
Pastor
Park has two
Bartling.
Lutheran churches.
Pastor Bartling went down to Grant
Right,
Park. And
right.
hosted,
Pastor Bartling happened to be my confirmation teacher. I was in his first class, and he preached down in Grant Park in town. What's the name of that one? Our Redeemer. And the other one out there in the country where Kathy and I got married is St. Paul's. So that might have even been kind of an offshoot of Trinity, because there's so many people came here of the same faith. They needed places to worship that were in a reasonable distance to where they live. So a lot of daughter congregations. Also New Lenox, Frankfurt area, we've got Amazing Love. Can you think of any other? Oh, Emmanuel Lutheran in Stager was one. That's spelled with an I. So just a bunch of churches were spawned off of what started here in Trinity, which really kind of spawned off of Country Club Hills, because they even had our people's church records in Country Club Hills. The reason I found out about that is my cousin Howard, he does genealogy, and he was trying to find some birth records or marriage records or something, and called over to the church office in Country Club Hills. And so they sent him a copy of the page, and the one that really floored him was our great-grandfather and grandmother's marriage, whatever they had to do to get him set up there to get married. And he had been looking for that, didn't know where it was. Here it's on the page that they sent him a copy of just by mistake. So he was really tickled about that. So
On that note, just on other churches or daughter congregations, 14 is the number I've been given. And we're working on number 14 in Indiana, but as far as daughtering or having some kind of hand in starting other churches, that's a lot.
Also, as far as Trinity kind of being a center for church, and for some of this outreach and everything, Trinity, our church was big enough that they selected that as a synod convention for the Missouri Synod, obviously pre-1949. So that was it was big enough, and so that's where they went for one of them.
okay, so that's pretty interesting. Just wanted to talk about a few other things here. I was going through some of these books, and probably not common knowledge to a lot of people now is that Trinity split again in about 1960. There was a theological difference between the Missouri Synod and Pastor Kretzmann. He was not happy with the way they were going, and so Trinity left the Missouri Synod and was in the Synodical Conference for a while, and then ended up in the Wisconsin Synod where we're at today. So that's, churches do change, and for whatever reason, sometimes pleasant, sometimes not, but here we are, we're still plugging right along. So that's important to know that. other cemeteries. We've got a couple other cemeteries in Crete. The one is the Crete Cemetery right on Exchange Street, and then another block on the other side of the road is Adams Cemetery. But there used to be a cemetery where the infield of the racetrack was. That was a little settlement called Hughesburg, and Jim's related to the Hughes descent. He's a descendant of the Hughes. Hughesburg had this big tract of property, and their whole family kind of was in that area. And then when the racetrack came in, that cemetery was left in the infield. Now they've changed the track configuration once, and there was a pond in there, so I'm not sure what happened to those burials. I know we've got a Revolutionary War soldier buried in Crete. He was in the Hughesburg Cemetery, and they disinterred him and reinterred him in the Crete Cemetery. So there's a monument there for him, and the DAR, the Daughters of the Revolution, have put some notable things by his gravestone. So those are some cemeteries, local cemeteries. Another one that I've kind of just an interesting story, Emmanuel Lutheran at Sauk Trail and Cicero Avenue. That must have been a pretty big church, because the church is there and they got a big graveyard right by the church, and then they got another big graveyard across the street. And yeah, but when they were widening Cicero, you know, as graveyards go, stones get knocked over, grass grows over them. Pretty soon you don't even know there's a grave there. So there was a lot of flat grass over there that were all graves. And when they worked up Cicero Avenue, they disturbed a few graves. So now they've got a wrought iron fence in front of there. We kept cattle out there, keeping equipment out. But there was a guy named Richard Stunkel. He's passed away a few years ago, but he was like 95 years old. He did the research on their church map for their cemetery and found out all the names of the burials there, and they put a big marble panel up there with all those names accounting for those burials by that church. I mean, they're I'd say 4 foot by 8 foot panels that they put up there with all those names on. The cemetery across the street is newer, and you can read the gravestones and things there. So I don't think those are on that list. So.
Tim?
Yeah.
The cemetery that's out on Moaning Road, isn't that Trinity Cemetery?
Yes, that's Black Walnut.
That's Black Walnut.
Right. That house that's on the corner, it's a brown house that sits back off of Money Road and Bainaki Road. There's a brown house there. I'd sure like to see if that's a log cabin underneath the siding on there. That would be pretty interesting to see, because I mean that's how they built buildings back in those days. Us guys on the Historical Society have found that out. The Congregational Church was the second oldest church in Crete. The Methodist Church was a year or two older, and then we came along in 1849. So yeah, churches were a big deal for people. They took it pretty serious there. But we found out how they constructed those buildings. That's all hand-hewn timbers that are fit together, and we've dismantled a lot of them now because we've got to do some repairs on the floor in there. But that's how they built those things. You know, people would come here, they didn't have a place to live. They'd either dig a hole in the ground and put some roof over the hole in the ground, or they'd have to, if it was early enough in the year, they'd have to cut down trees themselves and build their houses. And probably had a few neighbors that maybe chipped in some help there, but boy, you're on your own out here in the hinterland. So, oh, okay. I think that's all that I've got here on what I wrote up here. You know, you're welcome to walk around and look here and see some of the names here. You know, a lot of us know people that have passed away recently, or maybe some time ago. I always think of Charlie Seahouse. He was about the most generous guy that we've had at Trinity, I would say. He really did a great thing for us, and he ran the grocery store in town, and his two boys took over after him. Same kind of people. They supported the community, not just Trinity. They supported the community. So I think of a guy that does good, I think of Charlie Seahouse. He had a sign in his store that said, "It's nice to be important, but it's much more important to be nice." And he lived by that. So, anyhow, I think I'll just let you meander around here. If you got any questions, You can get my email address from church or something if you've got some questions. I'd be glad to try to track stuff down for you. But I'd like to close today with the common doxology. We would sing that. Praise God from whom all blessings flow. Praise Him, all creatures here below. Praise Him above the heavenly host. Praise Father, Son, and Holy Ghost. Okay, thanks for coming out today, and just feel free to wander around. You'll see a lot of names that you know and recognized, and I'll be glad to answer any questions I can, or anybody else that has been around here a while can help out with that too. So, thanks for coming today.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tim.
Everybody got a program, right?
Yep.